Today, UKIP attempted to relaunch themselves as a credible party, except they can't spell. I'm Max, and this is the EB Podcast. So, why not start with UKIP? So the party today tried to relaunch themselves, as I said before, and it didn't go so well. First off, they tweeted they were counting votes for Tagi new logo. Tagi instead of the, that is. Not one for giving advice to UKIP myself, but come on, right? It's basic practice to ensure that you can spell right, especially on all party broadcasts, and now that does include social media as well. Now, I get away with it on Twitter because I'm just a guy who comments on news and does a podcast, but I'm not, a supposedly official party. Anyway, moving on, that was a quick talk about that. The EU are once again becoming difficult. It seemed after Theresa May's Brexit speech in Florence that things were looking up, right? But those were only words. Actions are always louder than those. So this week as new negotiations begin, the actions after that speech begin. I keep fluffing his name up. Jean-Claude Juncker said it would be a miracle or take a miracle for talks to progress to the next stage by the end of October. That's to do with an EU-UK trade deal. They need to finish discussing the financial settlement, EU citizens' rights, and the Northern Irish border before they can continue with the next part of our Brexit negotiation story. Now, EU rights seems pretty straightforward. Working EU citizens should have rights to work here, as ours will do abroad as well. I think the Northern Irish border works as it did when I went to the Republic of Ireland in summer. You just drive straight through. I don't see why that should be a problem negotiating that, which leaves the exit payment to be discussed. So how much should this be? People like Nigel Farage want no payment to the EU. They think we don't need to pay them anything anymore when we leave. So do many Brexit voters, especially UKIP. But some do say we have made commitments, but surely it shouldn't be too large. I think it should be smaller than the £20 billion offered or suggested that's been rumoured. And we are leaving, right? We're not paying for the benefits of the EU anymore. And my argument is, I'd say, that we may want to pay a bit to the EU, but another thing that we could consider is that or just play out to the EU, is the simple fact that if they bash out a good trade deal with the UK, then they will make a lot of money back through trading with us after Brexit has happened. So ideally, we don't need to pay them any exit bill, because instead of just paying them one time, we can maybe say, okay, look, we won't pay you a big exit bill, but we will pay you, over a certain amount of time, or we'll just let you enjoy some more benefits of our trade, maybe have some special tariff agreements, some sort of thing with the EU. We really do need to, instead of just thinking of it as a base payment, we need to think of how we can do it in the long term in order to make life better for them so that they get happy and receive their money, but also for us, that we don't have to just pay a massive blanket payment to the EU, risking our own finances. Finally, I am happy with May. Why? She has finally taken a turn towards the free market that our country was built upon. A lot of anger over capitalism's failure, as Corbyn says, and a lot of others say, especially those on the left, mainly because of austerity. But as I said before, or I will say now, the reason austerity is happening is so that we can close the government deficit. Once we close the government deficit, we can deal with the debt. That's what's been rising. Now, the reason we haven't been able to deal with the debt at the moment is because we have had to borrow to fund government projects and things while we still are running at a government budget deficit. Once we've covered the deficit, we'll be running at a surplus, which is essentially a profit. Use that money to cover the debt. Once we use the money to cover the debt, we can then use our own money to fund more government services and build up the NHS, fund more things. This will take time. It might not happen in the next 2, 3, 4, even 5 years, which is why it's important that voters hold on for the long term instead of voting in Labour into Parliament next time and having a lot of spending, a lot of cuts being reversed, and put us in a position of economic instability. So finally, speaking of business or economics, Elon Musk, the millionaire owner of Tesla and PayPal, he might be a billionaire, I'm not sure at the moment, I forgot. He has announced he's going to bring out a very futuristic space travel operation. So well, not space travel, it's into international travel, but it does look like a spaceship. Places you can go from like London to New York in 30 minutes. I think Hong Kong to Singapore takes about 25 minutes. I saw a video on his Instagram of a sort of mock-up of it, and it looks like you physically take off like a spaceship and disconnect like you would a nuclear weapon, which I'm sure would be great fun for some people with travel sickness. But I mean, each to their own. If he wants to make it look like a bomb, it does look great, and it does look like it's going to be a success. Obviously, it's a lot more futuristic. It's going to take a lot of investment, a lot of testing to make sure we don't just crash on the first go. But one more business story I'll talk about before I go. London house prices fell for the first time in 8 years. They dropped 0.8% year on year in September, which is good news. If this can continue, it'll be a great counter to the opposition of the government who moan about house prices and the effect on people like me, young people, Generation Z, trying to grow up after uni. And it shows them that the free market is working. If you leave the market alone, it will eventually correct itself. People will move to cheaper places like Manchester and Leeds. Those places will get the, people who have a lot of talent but not a lot of money. Then those places will become more prosperous because of that. And London will have to do something. The free market in London will have to do something to get those people back. Or if they want people to buy houses here, when demand goes down, they'll have to lower the prices. So that's just how the free market works. You will eventually correct itself, or a new way of living will come in. Things like multi-person renting or things like that. So anyway, I'll be back on Monday. Hopefully nothing horrible happens over the weekend. But then again, the last time I said that, North Korea launched a missile. So I'm Max, and this is the E-Brougham podcast. I'll see you on Monday.